Right. I'm saying here that this short story is an example of Bildungsroman, which is the terminology used for, it's actually a German word. It's like from building, and Bildungsroman, which is really the idea about how people write about their own life, how they change and mature step by step. And here in fiction really is how writers use characters who are at the same time, talking about their own life, like something like autobiography, how you give, for example, a certain period of time, talking about how you mature in time and in years. For example, when you grow up from being a boy into for example, like a young man into a man, and so on. And Joyce, and I think I mentioned this to you before, last time, he really did this in so many ways in his fiction, mainly in his great novel called The Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. That novel really showed in the same way how the character novelist in that story, character artist, narrator, character artist, who is talking about his own self, his own life, and the way he is, developing. And of course, he gives so many questions and thinks through this. It's not just about, in a simple way, how you talk about your maturity. And here, this story is a little snapshot of that. We have a young boy who really fell in love with this young, absolutely even maybe older sister of his friend. And he thought he was in love, and he thought he was going to bring her a present. And he thought he was, coming back with a good present, because he went to the fair, which is, as I said, called Araby, but he couldn't bring anything, and he was devastated. The way he felt is absolutely funny. But when you read the story, clearly, as I will do today for you, really you think, wow, this is a lovely, amazing love story. You think this is really a lovely love story. But of course, the writer is, as I said, really, Joyce was really mocking the whole idea of how people sometimes feel that they are in love when they are really not, if you like. Or people may say, well, this is maybe the childish kind of love, or the first sight sort of love, and so on. You can have so many, if you like, ideas about that. It's possible. But really, this is the point I want you to keep in mind here about that. So notice here the early parts of the story, as you can see here. Notice in the first page 47. 47 in your booklet, the book we have. And you can see it here, there. When the short days of winter came, dusk fell before we had well eaten our dinners. Again, I want you always to pay attention to the idea of the narration. And here the voice we see, again, similar to the previous one by Faulkner, using we. He means himself and his family, and me, and himself and his friends in the school, and so on. So but really, he's talking about his own position among his family and in the area with the other boys in the neighborhood. That's why he's saying we. When we met in the street, the houses had grown somber. Again, here, when he say here somber, again, if I highlight it, really to say that the story for him, that the atmosphere for him is quite lonely and quite isolated. Let me check something on my Okay, so the idea here to say about somber means isolated, lonely, sad, miserable, and so on. I think because this is a reflection to his own life, because he's a young boy who has lost his family and he's living with his uncle and aunt. And really, it reflects in his own childhood, if you like, about being bereaved or being lonely or being, he lost his parents. And to some extent is the way to see the effect of that on his character. So the idea to say that the whole area for him to see, it seems that could be isolated and could be sad. Notice he said, the space of sky above us was the color of ever-changing violet, and towards it the lamps of the street lifted their feeble lanterns. Again, as I said, don't forget when you always comment on passages like this, and I will always give you a passage or two or three. Really, you have to give at least one or two sentences about the narrative voice, about the narrator. What kind of narrator, and in what sense you see this narrator. Notice here, it's the first person narrator and character himself, narrator, character, hero of the story, right? And we see here how, as I say, he's reflecting on the place, again, the question of the color, because this symbol of, or maybe later on, we use this as some kind of symbolism about the color of the sky for him, as you can see, changing violet. The cold air stung us, and we played till our bodies glowed. Our shouts echoed in the silent street. The career of our play brought us through the dark, muddy lanes behind the houses, where we ran the gauntlet to the rough tribes from the cottages to the back doors of the dark, dripping gardens, where odors arose from the ash pits, to the dark. Notice how many, as I said here, the question of colors. How many words used here? Say black and dark, and he's always using this really as I said, some kind of symbolism. Notice the dark, and he said that the dark many times. I say, notice here, muddy, dark. Let me highlight them. The muddy, dark, and ran gauntlet and rough tribes. Again here, the back. Again, the dark. The same word, dark, dripping. And he goes on, to say the dark odors, odors. And I think this is funny to describe the smell as being dark. I don't know how you can say that this smells, smells dark, which is really, in a way, funny. Again, coachman smooth combed the horse and shook music from the buckles harness. When we returned to the street, light from the kitchen windows had filled the areas. If my uncle was seen turning the corner, we hid in the shadow until we had seen him safely housed. Again, remember, he's telling us, he's this young boy is telling us about his situation and the way how he sees things with his own friends, the boys, the other boys playing in the neighborhood, in the street, everybody around the houses, he said, the gardens, everywhere. But to him, it seems to be like the whole thing really seems to be miserable. And he seems to be also running away from his uncle, as he said, which is really interesting to see how he sees this, that again, he's always reflecting about what's going to happen later. Again, notice the question of the shadow, again, the same thing, which is to do with darkness, right? Or if Mangan's sister came out on the doorstep to call her brother in to his tea. And funny enough, here always we see him saying about this young lady, this young girl, really, he calls her Manga's sister. He never mentions her name. He never really mentions her name in a real sense. And he always says, you know, Mangan. And of course, this, again, as I will show you, this reflects his own character. So he's, you know, introducing how he feels towards this young lady. Notice, Manga's sister came out of the doorsteps to call her brother into his tea. Into his tea. What's his tea? What's tea here? Hello?
To have a cup of tea, maybe?
No. Yeah? Anyone? I know it's an English expression. Maybe you don't know it unless you have been really through,
maybe he
or
is
you read so many, or you heard.
Or
Doctor, maybe
Sorry?
receiving?
No, really his tea is his main dinner. His main dinner, food. We ask someone, did you have your tea? Means, have you eaten your dinner? Your food, your main dinner time, your main meal in the day. English people, they call it tea. You know, English are crazy. They say so many funny things. And he, you know, they use this to his tea, really, he means to his main meal, asking her brother to come to the house to have his main dinner. His main dinner, not lunch, because lunch is always smaller in the English sense. The English, they use the word lunch to mean quick meal, really, not very heavy, spicy, you know, full of meat and things. And really the main heavy meal in England is, or in Britain, in the English culture, is really the main meal, which is about 6 o'clock in the afternoon, in the evening. They call this, yes, the main course, the main meal, not just course, because you could have a meal with many courses. But the main meal, like here, you have your dinner maybe at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock when everybody comes home. Kids, father, mother, everybody, they sit and they have their own big meal. And this is what we call, in English, they call it tea. Why? Because they are English. And why? Because they always drink tea at the end. Why? Because they always drink tea at the end of the main meal. And this is really amazing. And I lived myself in England nearly 7 years, and I know how they do this, and it's, you know, it's their life. Anyway, so here he is saying that she was asking him to come into the house to have his main dinner. We watched her from our shadow peer up and down the street. You know, again, to say as if we were watching her in a sort of stealthily, you know, we were frightened to allow her to see us. We were like you know, trying to spy on her to see how she looks and so on, you know. And that's why really he used the word we watched, and that's why he said shadow. And again, you say to appear a little bit. We waited to see whether she would remain or go in, and if she remained, we left our shadow and walked up to Manigan's steps resignedly. Now here you can say we, who? The speaker, the narrator, speaker, character, and Manigan, because Manigan is his friend, And it could be with other boys. I don't know. He doesn't tell us what boys, who are these boys. So at least we can say that he and his friend Manigan, his name, as you can see, Manigan is very typical Irish name. Remember, James Joyce is an Irishman, and he really reflects everything to do with Irish. He's an amazing writer, I think. She was waiting for us, her figure defined by the light from the half-open door. Again, notice the contrast with light and half-open. Her brother always teased her before he obeyed, and I stood by the railings looking at her. So notice here, remember, they are boys, young boys. And he said her brother always teasing her, he does not listen, he doesn't obey her. So he tries to laugh or mock her or something. And he saying here, the speaker saying, I would be sitting there looking at her and watching at her. Her dress swung as she moved her body, and the soft rope of her hair tossed from side to side. Every morning I lay on the floor of the front parlor watching her door. Really, from here you can see it's a terrible, story here. You could see the poor boy is completely in love with her, and he has never even spoke a word to her. And even he never, if you like, really, clearly even, he doesn't know anything at all about her. So notice how he is, in a funny way, he said, I would be waiting and waiting and waiting and watching, trying to see if I can see her. Again, he said, lay on the floor. The blind was pulled down to remain within an inch of the sash so that I could not be seen. So he was hiding behind the curtain and watching out of the window to see when she opens the door, so he could see her, or he could maybe go out to talk to her or something. When she came out on the doorstep, my heart leaped. Wow. So he said, as I said, really, this is funny. Maybe you can laugh. Maybe you can laugh. He say, this is childish love. But yes, I mean, this is the idea. He is showing us how much really he loves her. When she came out of the doorstep, my heart leaped. I ran to the hall, seized my books, and followed her. I kept her brown figure always in my eye, and when we came near the point at which our ways diverged, I quickened my pace and passed her. This happened morning after morning. I had never spoken to her except for a few casual words, and yet her name was like a summons to all my foolish blood. Wow. Her name. What's her name? He never told us what's her name. He said her name was like a summons. Wow. Summons, it's like those, as if to say, really, like calls from heaven, like prayers to heaven. It's a shame, really. And he said, they make my blood boil up, if you like. That's why he said my foolish blood. Her image accompanied me even in places like most hostile to romance. He said, even I remember her everywhere. I remember her in everywhere, even in places where I should not remember her, I still remember her. And that's what he means in places the most hostile to romance. Means you could be sometimes in a certain place when you don't have time for romance. And here he's saying, I still remember her. Really, this is funny, and this is absolutely funny. And the writer really here is mocking his childish love. On Saturday evening, when my aunt went marketing, I had to go to carry some of the parcels. We walked through the flaring streets, jostled by drunken men and bargaining women, amid the curses of laborers, the shrill litanies of shop boys who stood on guard by the barrels of pigs' cheeks, the nasal chanting of street singers who sang Come All You About, and Donovan Rosa, of course, he's mentioning some of those singers if you like, or a ballad about the troubles in our native land. Wow. Again, I think James Joyce here is laughing at his country, because his nation, his country, Ireland, was under the occupation of the English rule about hundreds of years. And believe it or not, Ireland took independence from England only in 1922. In 1922, Ireland became a different nation, or independent nation from the English or the British Empire. And really here he's saying, we Irish people are bad and are lazy. We did not do good enough to kick away the English from our land. And that's why he's saying, Barrett, I think he was mocking in a way about how people were just chanting songs, hoping that they will kick away the English or the British colonizers. These noises converged in a single sensation of life for me. Again, here he's saying, thinking about that, looking at her and thinking about us wanting to sing for victory and to get rid of the English colonial power. And he felt that he is a hero. He's a great man. He's a great warrior. He wants to do a lot of terrible things because he feels so great, so powerful, as if to say, I'm a man here. I want to marry this girl because I love her, I imagined I bore my chalice safely through a throng of foes, as if to say I was carrying the torch of victory. As if, that's what he means, managed to bore my chalice. Again, the word chalice, like, when you drink for or your cheers for victory. And I think that, it's very funny. As I said, really the writer here wants to say, again, to talk about the whole idea of irony at the end of the day. The whole thing, when I say funny and comedy and mockery, really it's part of the irony later on. So he's saying he imagined himself thinking about her as he's being in love with her, and he's going to marry her, and he's going to get rid of all the problems, like a marching army conquering the land. Again, notice, through a throng of foes, as if I'm among, in a massive crowd of enemies, and I will kill them all. I will beat all the enemies of the world. Her name sprang to my lips at moments in strange prayers and praises which I myself did not understand. Again, as you can see, he's a young boy, and even I doubted if he was praying or something, but he said, I felt like mentioning her name. And funny enough, he has never mentioned her name. We don't know her name, And he said, her name came to my lips while I'm praying to heaven, because as if to say, I have, discovered my great love. Again, said prayers and praises, praying to heaven and praising heaven. And he said, the thing that I don't understand. Well, yeah, again, because, as I said, he was a little child. He is a little child. My eyes were often full of tears. What? He was crying. My eyes were often full of tears. I could not tell why. Oh, what a shame. What a shame. My eyes were often full of tears. I could not tell why, and at times a flood from my heart A flood from my heart seemed to pour itself into my own bosom. You know, bosom, his chest, he said, as if all my feelings and my emotions are boiling and pouring into my chest, into my real bosom, as if to say there are floods and floods of emotions in my body. Wow. I thought little of the future. Can you believe it? He's only about 9, by the way, he's only about 9 or 10. And now he stopped thinking about the future. La ilaha illallah, young boy, hey. You know, I thought little about the future. I did not know whether I would ever speak to her or not, or if I spoke to her, how I could tell her of my confused adoration. Come on, boy, grow up. Adoration? He said, I don't know if I will ever see her. I don't know if I will ever talk to her. I don't know if I will ever be able to tell her that I'm worshiping you. Adore? You know, adoration? And notice he said confused. You know, he's in total confusion, of course. Again, as I said, to do with his own really situation as a young boy who lost his parents. But my body was like a harp, and her words and gestures were like fingers running upon the wires. Wow, I think this is an amazing thing. And I think this is really a nice, absolutely nice, if you like, really nice romantic thing that you could always imagine that this can be said by a young boy. You would swear that this is said by a man who's absolutely infatuated and in love with this woman. One evening, I went into the back drawing room in which the priest had died. It was a dark, rainy evening. Again, he's talking about darkness again. I will highlight it again. Rainy evening, and there was no sound in the house. Through one of the broken panes, I heard the rain impinge upon the earth, the fine, incessant needles of water playing. In the sodden beds, some distant lamps of lighted window gleamed below me. I was thankful I could see so little. All my senses seemed to desire to veil themselves, and feeling that I was about to slip from them, I pressed the palms of my hands together until they trembled, murmuring, oh, love, you know? Many times he said, you know, he's saying this as if he's praying. Oh, what a shame. Come on, boy. Come on, boy. That's not you. Come on. You're still young. Don't say that. You know? So really the narrator here is laughing, I think. Well, he's the narrator. I think the writer wants to say, look at this boy. He's crazy about love. I don't know if this is possible. At last, she spoke to me. Alhamdulillah. At last, she spoke to me. When she addressed the first words to me, I was so confused that I did not know what to answer. She asked me, was I going to Araby? You know? She asked me, was I going to Araby? Notice here the writer really is mocking again the style of narrative. This is really supposed to be a question. Was I, notice, was I going to Araby? We really here, we need a question mark. But again, as I said, our friend Joyce is challenging this, as I said, the inverted commas and punctuations and things like that. Really, he's challenging all these things in really an amazing fashion. So here he's saying, she asked me, was I going to Araby? As I said, you know, the Araby is the fair or the exhibition. I forgot whether I answered yes or no. It would be a splendid bazaar. She said she would love to go. Now remember, this story is written in a flashback. Here the writer is an older man, maybe an older young man, and is reflecting on his past. And that's why he's using always the past tense to say, I was, and I forgot, etc., etc. Now he's reflecting to us about what happened to him when he was a young boy. Again, as I said, really, this is lovely the way, the narrative is done again. And why can't you, I asked. Here, again, you can see, here he used the direct speech. Again, as I said, in many, many places, Joyce actually does not use the inverted commas. Here he's using one comma as a quotation. In many places, he does not do it. Maybe this is, here he did this, but in many other novels, he does not use quotation marks. As I said to you, he calls them perverted marks, or instead of inverted, he said perverted. While she spoke, she turned a silver bracelet round and round her wrist. She could not go, she said, because there would be a retreat that week in her convent. Her brother and two other boys were fighting for their caps, and I was alone in the railings. You see, here again, he's reflecting that why she can't go, and again, he's, he's trying to, use this, if you like, use the Christian sense. And I think, Irish people, generally, Irish people are very Christian. They are mostly Catholics. And, in England or in the Christian culture, Catholics are very conservative, if you like. And here really we see here we see him in a way, saying that religion is not the answer to kick away the enemy, or to kick away the English, colonial power. Her brother and two other boys were fighting for their caps, and I was alone at the railings. She held one of these spikes, bowing her head towards me. The light from the lamp opposite her door, our door, caught the white curve of her neck, lit up her hair that rested there unfalling, lit up the land upon the railings. Hasbi Allah. Yeah, so the boy here really is, as you can see, is describing this, describing her neck, her body as being lovely, and the color and all this. He said it lit up, lit up the whole street, lit up upon the railings, as if to say she was really amazingly, devastatingly lovely and beautiful. And she gave, as we say, light to the whole area, Again, as you can see here, you can say, come on, boy, what's wrong with you? It fell over one side of her dress and caught the wide border of a petticoat just visible as she stood at ease. It's well for you, she said. She's asking him, I can't go to Araby, but you should go because it's good for you. And he said, if I go, I said, I will bring you something. So he committed himself to go and bring her something. What innumerable follies laid waste my waking and sleeping thoughts after that evening. As if to say, after that evening, I was devastated. I couldn't sleep. He said follies. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't study. Oh, what a shame. I wished to annihilate the tedious intervening days. Look at the verb annihilate. Means to completely delete. to completely obliterate. I want to cut the days short. I want to, to the days to be quickly to come to Saturday to go. I chafed against the work of school. He stopped studying. I mean, he couldn't do his homework. At night in my bedroom and by day in the classroom, her image came between me and the page I strove to read. It's not, really, it's nice. This is funny. He said, when I'm reading as a student, as a young boy, he said, I can't read because I see her face on my page, And again, he said, I strove, means I struggle. He was terribly having problems and difficulties to read because he's in love. The syllables of the word. Yeah, somebody saying something? Okay, somebody coming in. Okay. The syllables of the word Araby were called to me through the silence in which my soul luxuriated and cast an Eastern enchantment over me. Now he started to really like the word Araby and everything. He said, everything now I'm thinking about it. I asked for leave to go to the bazaar on Saturday night. My aunt was surprised and hoped it was not some Freemason affair. I answered few questions in class. I watched my master's face pass from amiability to sternness. He hoped I was not beginning to idle. I could not call my wandering thoughts together. I had hardly any patience with the serious work of life, which now that it stood between me and my desire seemed to me child's play, ugly, monotonous child's play. Again, here it's funny. He said, as if to say he knows what he's doing in a way. He said, well, come on, child. It's only child play. The whole thing is a child play. It's nothing really serious. But of course, later on we shall see. Well, he discovered that later. On Sunday morning, I reminded my uncle that I wished to go to the bazaar in the evening. He was fussing at the hall stand, looking for the hat brush, and answered me curtly, yes, boy, I know. As he was in the hall, I could not go into the front parlor and lie at the window. He's saying, I can't go and spy and look at my friend, and again, really, is an amazing thing. And notice here, he waited and waited and waited to go to the the bazaar, and his uncle was late and he was very angry and mad, because he wanted to go. So finally his uncle came a bit late. He said, at 9 o'clock, I heard my uncle's latchkey in the hall door. So his uncle finally arrived and he gave him the money to go. He told him, he said, when he was midway through his dinner, I asked him to give me the money to go to the bazaar. He had forgotten. Why people are people, and after their first sleep now, he said, his uncle saying to him, come on, why are you going at this time? Most of the people already are in bed. You can't go now, it's too late. I did not smile. My aunt said to him energetically, as if to say, he wanted to say to him, come on, boy, it's too late, don't go now. And the aunt, she's good aunt. She knows that her boy or the boy wanted to go. He was very angry to go. So that's why she was jeering at the, in a way, she was angry with her husband. I can't give him the money and let him go. Sorry, this is, can't you give him the money and let him go? You have kept him late enough as it is. You know, she really gave him, or she said to him, come on, man, give him his money and let him go. My uncle said he was very sorry. He had forgotten. He said he believed in the old saying, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. He asked me where I was going, and when I told him, a second time, he asked me, did I know the Arab's farewell to his steed? You know, this is, again, here I give a footnote, really. It's a poem, as you can see. Maybe if you want, you can check it. It's really a poem called The Arab Farewells. The Arab Farewell to His Steed is a poem by Irish poet Caroline Norton. And this poem really is an amazing romantic, in a way, romantic poem about the desert men, about, he's saying here about Arabs. And that's why he said the Arabs farewell to his steed, his horse, as if to say, you know, the question here is, his horse is dying and he's saying farewell to her. Again, here to say to him, you are going somewhere and you're not going to find anything. You will go back miserable. Don't go, as if to say. And the story of that here, I think, is very tragic and very sad in that story. So that's why he's, you know, saying, have you read that? Have you read that book? The Arab's farewell to his steed. You know, and I think it's quite interesting here to see the reaction, of course. I held a florin tightly in my hand as I stood down Buckingham Street towards the station. Here he's telling us how he walked. He got the money, and how he walked madly quickly because he wants to go and reach the fair. To reach the fair, as we know, he's going to the fair to have a look at it and maybe to get a present to her, because she said, you can go and bring something. And again, really, it's quite interesting after all this. It's in a way quite philosophical thing here about what he is really saying here. I took my seat in a third-class carriage of a deserted train. After an intolerable delay, the train moved out of the station slowly. It crept, you know, the way he describes it, again, is really very interesting. And I think I will to reflect to see how really he feels going there in a very amazing way. I couldn't find any sixpenny entrance, and fearing that the bazaar would be closed, I passed in quickly through the turnstile, handing a shilling to a weary-looking man. I found myself in a book hall, girded at half its height by a gallery. Nearly all the stalls were closed, and the greater part of the whole darkness. Again, we go back to the idea of darkness. So he went to the fair, but he found it closed. What a shame. Yeah. I recognized a silence like that, which pervades a church after a service. I walked into the center of the bazaar timidly. A few people were gathered about the stalls, which were still before. So again, you can see here something. Before a curtain over which the words chaff chantant were written in colored lamps, two men were running, counting money on a salver. I listened of the coins. again, you can see here a little bit of the really association and the symbolism. He's saying he heard people maybe closing down and they were just ready to go. Remembering with difficulty why I had come, I went over to one of the stalls and examined porcelain vases and flower tea sets. Because remember, he said he's going to bring her something, he wants to buy something, and immediately he said, well, maybe I should do it now, right now, immediately. You see, I did not highlight all the thing because really I can't do that, because everything really is lovely to think about and to notice. At the door of the hall of the stall, a young lady was talking and laughing with two young gentlemen. I remarked their English accents and listened vaguely to the conversation. Oh, I never such a thing. Okay, so he heard people speaking something and he got this idea maybe from what they say. I never said such a thing. Oh, you did? Oh, I didn't. Didn't she say that? Yes, I heard her. Oh, there is, a fib. They were arguing some kind of argument, and which is really here to us is meaningless. Observing me, the young man or the young lady came over and asked me, did I wish to buy anything? Again, look at this indirect question, but he's using it as a question. Did I wish to borrow anything? It should really end with a question mark. The tone of her voice was not encouraging. She seemed to have spoken spoken to me out of a sense of duty. I looked humbly at the great jars that stood like Eastern guards at either side of the dark entrance. Again, really here is interesting to see about the tone, the way he's studying her tone. She spoke to me in a sense of duty. I looked humbly at the great jars and stood like Eastern guards at either side of the dark entrance of the hall and murmured, no, thank you. The young man changed the position of one of the vases and went back to the two young men. They began to talk of the same subject. Once or twice, the young lady glanced at me over her shoulder. I lingered before her stall, though I knew my stay was useless, to make my interest in her wares even the most real. Then I turned away slowly and walked down the middle of the bazaar. I followed the two pennies to fall again, the sixpence. I heard a voice call from one end of the gallery that the light was out. The upper part of the hall was now completely dark. Gazing up into the darkness, I saw myself a creature driven and derided by vanity, and my eyes burned with anguish and anger. Well, really, this is it. And the self-realization that all what he has seen, he had seen people fighting, and there's no romance, and there's nothing to buy. And he was looking, and he was shocked to see that, what is this here? There's nothing here. The whole thing is closed, nearly closed. The only 2 or 3 shops open, and these shops are bad examples of shops. They are really terrible shops. And the shock to him, as we say, made him really realize. And that's what we see maybe in his fiction. He calls this epiphany. as if to say you wake up from terrible prison for something, or for maybe an idea or whatever. And here really he's saying, Astaghfirullah, what was I doing? What was I doing? You know, now I can see. I was totally blind and I was totally stupid and blah, 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 blah. And now what am I doing? So that's why really the whole scene here is very ironical, that he came to just to know himself, to not really to know other people, and etc. And I think this is very really important, if you like. Well, I think that's all, ladies and gentlemen. If you have any question, please, again, you can ask. For next time, as I said, read, I think, yeah, it's called yeah, Flannery. You can see it here, Flannery O'Connor. A good man is hard to find. Yeah, any question, anything? Hello, I know it's a very bad time